When looking at the NBA media, one superstar they rarely ever give credit to is Giannis Antetokounmpo, as in the past 2 years, he's debunked nearly all their false narratives. And looking at ESPN specifically, their quote-unquote top analysts were responsible for most of these narratives. And in today's video, we're going to hop in the time machine, look at these awful takes and how badly they've aged, as well as expose the analyst who made them. And first up, we have Stephen A. Smith debating KD versus Giannis and who is the better overall player.
I'm not going for that. You know good and well Giannis ain't KD. Let's pump the brakes now. Like, Giannis is great. He's phenomenal.
What is it that
he
Giannis
ain't Kevin
doesn't
Durant.
do? What is his flaw?
Excuse me?
What is Giannis's flaw?
How about perimeter shooting? How about perimeter shooting? How about that? That does matter. That does matter.
Valen just spelled this out. We're not trying to identify the best.
Please.
But when we talk about skills and what a brother brings to the table, this dude ain't on KD's level. I don't want to hear that. He's not Kevin Durant.
Well,
let's stop that right now.
So as you guys can see right there, Stephen A. Smith is stuck in 2017 with the Kevin Durant versus Giannis debate. As at this point, in my personal view, Giannis is the much better player. And to back that up, look at their last 10 meetings head-to-head. Giannis in those matchups averages 36 points, 12 boards, 5 assists on 55% shooting. Kevin Durant in his own right has great numbers, averaging 35 points, 11 boards, 6 assists on 49% shooting. But looking at those stats, the one thing you won't see is the overall record of those two head-to-head, as Giannis in those 10 games is 9-1 versus KD and has won 5 straight games. To put it quite simply, Giannis head-to-head has dominated Kevin Durant over the past 2 seasons. And looking at Stephen A's overall argument in favor of KD, the one thing he brings up is skill and outside shooting. Of course, when it comes to Giannis, he's not a great shooter, he's no Steph Curry or even Kevin Durant. But looking at his overall game at this point, he has less flaws than KD. And looking at these two players, you can look at the offensive gap, which is really small, but the big gap is on the defensive end, something no one ever talks about. As Giannis at this point at his peak is a top 5 defender easy on a nightly basis, compared to Kevin Durant, who's barely even top 50. And if you look at defensive plus minus over the past 4 years, Giannis has ranked 2nd, 4th, 1st, and 1st, compared to KD, who ranked 91st, 39th, 40th, and 52nd. Once again, looking at these two players, the gap in defense is far wider than the gap on offense. And staying with Stephen A. Smith next up, he'll debate Ja Morant versus Giannis, a debate that's even more outrageous.
Stephen A., would you rather have Ja or Giannis in these playoffs?
I got to tell you. Listen, Giannis is an obvious answer. Let me say this to you.
If Giannis is the obvious answer, take him and choose him over Ja Morant. Don't overthink this, just say Giannis is better.
Let Ja Morant keep ascending. And I might go with Ja. I think it's a discussion. Giannis is Giannis. And I get that. And he's the reigning finals MVP, reigning champion. He's a former league MVP, defensive player of the year. I mean, the guy's phenomenal. I get all of that. Giannis is Giannis. But we don't know what the hell Ja gonna be.
I've never seen someone so eager to knock the best player off his pedestal as well as the mountaintop. As once again looking at Giannis, even Stephen A. admits he's an MVP, a defensive player of the year, and a great NBA player. And at this point on any given night, he's giving you 30, 15, and 5 with phenomenal defense. That right there, quite literally, is a 2K generated player in actual real life. And speaking of Ja Morant, no shade to him, but in his career, he's never going to reach that peak and be prime Giannis. Because on defense, Ja Morant is a borderline liability compared to Giannis, who's a top 5 defender. And once again, looking at these debates, what's ignored constantly? Defensive impact by great NBA superstars. And to make this pretty simple, looking at Giannis, if you took away all of his offensive talent, he would still be a top 5 defensive player and most likely a Hall of Famer in the ilk of a Ben Wallace. Looking at Ja Morant, you take away his offensive talent, he's not even in the NBA, and he's probably doing dunk contests on YouTube. Now, look past Stephen A. Smith. Next up, we have Ryan Hollins, one of the worst analysts at ESPN, and just one of the worst basketball figures in general.
I remember somebody talking about how Giannis was going to dunk his way through the playoffs and yada, yada, yada. Listen, this man is right now, he's the most overrated in basketball. To me, when you talk MVP, that means you're the most valuable player on the team. Your impact is the largest. And when I watch Giannis, yes, he rebounds, he blocks shots, he defends, he does all those little things. I love what he does. I love him. But he's not going to close out a game for you.
Now, if I heard Ryan Hollins correctly, he says Giannis, he rebounds, he defends, he scores, he passes, but even despite that, he's not the MVP of his own team. What Ryan Hollins is doing right here, he's comparing Giannis to absolute perfection, overlooking all he does and focusing in on the minute flaws. And it is pretty hilarious, he calls defense one of the small things, when quite literally, it's 50% of the game that Giannis dominates. But once again, ESPN, they overlooked that in overall rankings as well as player debates.
He's not going to go out and win that big game. In fact, in the fourth quarters, he turns into more of a center and more of into a roller to the rim rather than a guy with the ball in his hands creating opportunities for others. When you watch the Bucks play, it's Bledsoe, it's Middleton. Those guys are closing the games out. Those guys are hitting big shots. Those guys are playmaking, Jay Will. So for me, I can't put you in that MVP candidacy unless you're closing games. I just can't give you that type of credit.
Now, looking at that last sentence, Ryan Hollins says Giannis Antetokounmpo can't be an MVP because he doesn't close games for his team. Look at some of the best centers in NBA history who didn't close for their squads every single time. You have Shaq, Moses Malone, even Kareem, who weren't the quote-unquote closers every single time. Now, even with that being said, Giannis was obviously deserving of winning MVP. But looking at that overall narrative, not being a clutch player and a good fourth quarter closer, that was debunked thoroughly multiple times in the 2021 playoffs. Look at Game 7 vs. Brooklyn, as Giannis in that matchup had 40 points, the most on his team, a clutch game-tying layup, and an OT crucial buckets. Look at the NBA Finals, after going down 0-2 vs. Phoenix in the following games, he had 41 points, 26, 32, as well as 50. In those final 4 games, he averaged a staggering 37 points per game. Even looking at last year's playoffs in the first round versus Chicago, after Middleton went out, remember how many fans are hyping the Bulls and how they're going to upset Milwaukee because Middleton, the closer, wasn't there for Giannis. But even with Middleton out, Giannis in the series, in games 3 through 5, averaged 28 points, 11 boards, 6 assists on 59% shooting. In those matchups, the Bulls lost by 30, 24, and 16 without Chris Middleton on the Bucks roster. My overall point being, Giannis, without his closer, still was effective and a dominant NBA player. And the overall narrative, he isn't a good fourth quarter player, has been destroyed numerous times, again, and again. Now, looking at our last ESPN analyst, we have Kendrick Perkins, who famously called Giannis the Robin of Milwaukee's team. Once again implying Chris Middleton was the Batman and the best closer as was fourth quarter player.
We heard Giannis in the post-game interview last night. He said, I trust Chris Middleton. He hasn't let me down too many times. In these moments, you go to your most skilled guy, a guy that shoot 50, 40, 90, going to knock down free throws, going to knock down timely shots, has the skill set to be able to create, get to his mid-range and pull up.
So once again, like Stephen A. Smith, Kendrick Perkins is talking about skill as well as shooting. And as you guys know, when it comes to basketball, skill and shooting is not the only aspect to a great player. And looking at Giannis, aka Robin, when it came to the 2021 playoffs in fourth quarter scoring, he ranked first with 148 on above 60%. Not bad for a guy who isn't skilled and a great fourth quarter player. And looking at the NBA Finals, after going down 0-2, compared to Chris Middleton, he had pretty impressive fourth quarter numbers. As Middleton in those games averaged 7.3 points on 53% shooting, compared to Giannis, who averaged 9.8 on 65% shooting.
I've been trying to preach to the world, Greeny. I've been having so many people attack me about me saying Giannis is the Robin. Like, that's a bad thing. Robin is still a superhero. He's just not Batman. He still need that big brother when things get tight, when he get a possession by possession to take him home. And that's what Chris Middleton does. That's who he is.
Now, looking at that last clip in hindsight, it's absolutely hilarious. As at that point in the series, it was tied at 2 games apiece. And ironically, Giannis in Game 6 had the best game of his career and quite possibly one of the best games in finals history. In total, having 50 points on 64% shooting, compared to Batman, who only had 17 on 46% shooting. Most of the times looking at cold takes, they take years, months, even weeks to become fully cold. But for Kendrick Perkins, it took a full 2 games in the finals for his take to be absolutely busted. And going full circle in this video, one common thing we saw was ESPN saying Giannis doesn't have skill, isn't a great shooter. And while one of those things is true, looking at Giannis' skill set for a 7-foot big man, it's unprecedented. And like we saw with Ryan Hollins, the one thing he does is compare Giannis to perfection. Every NBA player in NBA history has their flaws and their shortcomings. Some are bigger than others, but when looking at Giannis, if you only focus on his shooting ability or lack thereof, you're doing a disservice to his overall game and his two-way dominance. As looking at this year's playoffs, he's a great passer, great rebounder, on-ball, off-ball defender, he can block any shot at the rim, he can run the fast break, and sometimes has a deadly mid-range or fall-away jump shot. So with that final point being said, that is the end of the video. As always, thank you guys for watching, hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you guys next time.